Every guidebook hands you a list of 20 rules to memorize before visiting Thailand. Most travelers forget 18 of them at the airport.
But there is a single principle underneath nearly all of them, and once you understand it, you get things right on your own, even in situations nobody prepared you for.
Things you've never seen, now revealed.
This is Destinations in
In Thai
Detail.
Buddhism, the human body carries a spiritual hierarchy. The head is the highest and most sacred part. In this tradition, the place where the spirit resides. The feet are the lowest, both literally and symbolically. That single idea, held quietly by an entire culture, explains the majority of what a visitor needs to know in that country, not 20 rules. One principle, and the traveler who understands it stops carrying a memorized list altogether, because they begin reading situations correctly on their own, including the many situations nobody thought to explain.
Which matters, because the usual approach doesn't work. Search for what to do and what not to do in Thailand, and you'll find the same thing everywhere. A list of 20 disconnected rules to memorize before you fly. You read them on the plane, and by the third day you've forgotten most of them. And there's a second reason the list approach fails. It makes the whole thing feel like a minefield, when the reality is far warmer than that.
Because Thai etiquette actually divides into two quite different categories, and the visitor who can separate them travels relaxed. The first is firm, and it covers two things: the sacred spaces and objects of Buddhism, and monks. Those deserve real care, and we'll cover them properly. The second category is social custom: how you greet someone, how you sit, how you resolve a disagreement. And here's the reassuring part. In that second category, Thai people are notably generous with an honest mistake from a foreigner. A sincere apology settles it, and nobody holds a grudge. So this isn't about traveling in fear. It's about knowing where the two careful lines are and understanding the principle that explains all of them.
Start with the head. In much of the West, ruffling a child's hair is an automatic gesture of affection. In Thailand, that same gesture carries different weight because of where the head sits in that spiritual hierarchy. The guidance is simple and easy. Keep your hands to yourself. Nobody will read you as cold. It's what's expected, and on the other end, the feet. The guidance is about posture, and it's genuinely easy. Inside a temple, the correct way to sit on the floor is with your legs folded to one side, feet pointing behind you, or kneeling. It takes 10 seconds to learn, and Thai people recognize it immediately as a sign of respect. If you're not used to it, you'll feel it at first. And there's no problem shifting sides, adjusting, using your hands. What counts is the visible intention. And the visitor who sits correctly in a Thai temple receives a kind of welcome that no amount of money buys.
And before the practical part, dress, shoes, greeting, one thing worth establishing: none of this is rule for rule's sake, it's reverence. Once you understand what those buildings mean to the people who live there, the rest becomes natural rather than memorized.
Now the practical part, starting with what can literally determine whether you get in. The temple dress code is covered shoulders and covered knees. It applies to everyone, and major temples such as Wat Phra K in Bangkok enforce it. If your clothing isn't suitable, you'll be asked to cover up before entering. The solution is right there. Many temples rent a sarong at the entrance for 20 to 50 baht, and some lend them. But the experienced traveler's trick is simpler still. Carry a light scarf in your bag. It weighs nothing, takes no space, and solves every situation, including the one where you walk past a temple you hadn't planned to visit and decide to go in.
Inside the temple building, shoes come off. You won't need to hunt for a sign. The row of shoes at the entrance is the clearest instruction in the world. A practical tip: wear easy-off footwear during your trip, because this will happen several times a day, including at some homes and shops. And there's a detail in this tradition I find genuinely beautiful. Shoes are usually left with the toes facing outward toward the exit. There's a reason, so that when you put them back on, nobody has to turn their back on the altar. It's the kind of quiet consideration that tells you how a culture thinks. And inside, the guidance around sacred images is simple and positive. Admire from where you are, photograph discreetly, and when prayers are taking place, put the phone away. Being present is the gesture.
2 practical notes for temple visits. First, if you have a tattoo with religious imagery, local custom is to cover it while visiting. It isn't censorship in that setting the image is an object of veneration, and covering it is how consideration is shown. A light long sleeve does the job. And a lovely cultural note here: Thailand has its own sacred tattooing tradition, sak yant, administered with a monk's blessing, within the culture, with ritual and permission. That's a different thing entirely and part of local religious life. Second, regarding monks, there's a simple contact protocol. Women don't touch monks. To hand something over, a tray or an intermediary is used. It's the normal, expected procedure, and nobody finds it odd, quite the opposite. Doing it that way shows you took the trouble to learn. And alcohol isn't offered to monks.
Now the greeting, which is the most Thai thing there is. The Y palms pressed together at chest height with a slight bow of the head. And it's hierarchical. The younger or lower status person initiates and the elder returns it. So the practical rule for a visitor is simple and elegant. Return a Y when one is offered to you. And don't go around greeting everyone first. A sincere attempt is worth far more than ignoring the custom, even if you get the details slightly wrong. And then comes what may be the single most valuable piece of guidance in this video, and it has nothing to do with temples. Stay calm. Thai culture places enormous value on harmony and avoids open confrontation. Speaking softly, smiling, and resolving slowly works far better there than it does in your country. Someone who raises their voice doesn't win the argument. They lose standing in front of everyone present. Over a wrong bill, a misunderstanding about a price, the path is the opposite of the instinct. The calmer you stay, the faster it resolves.
And the same logic of high and low shows up in two small everyday gestures that almost no guidebook mentions. The first, to indicate something or someone. The custom is to use an open hand, palm upward, rather than pointing with a finger. It's a tiny detail, it takes a second to learn, and it changes the impression you make entirely. The second, when handing something over or receiving it, particularly from someone older, use both hands or your right hand supported at the forearm by your left. It applies to money, to a card, to a gift, to your change at a market stall. Nobody will correct you if you don't, but the person who does it is noticed immediately, and it costs nothing at all. And if you're invited into someone's home, shoes come off at the door, exactly as at a temple, and bringing a small sweet or some fruit is very warmly received. And if you get something wrong in the social category, and you will, everyone does, keep this phrase, kor thot crap if you're a man, kor thot ka if you're a woman. It means sorry. Say it with a slight bow of the head and genuine sincerity, and it's settled. In a culture that values harmony this much, an apology isn't a formality. It's the repair itself, and it works.
And that's where it all comes together. Notice that nothing we covered today was a prohibition. It was a principle. There is what belongs to the high and what belongs to the ground. There is what belongs to the spirit and what belongs to the body. The visitor who understands that stops carrying a list in their head because they start reading situations for themselves, including all the ones nobody explained, which are most of them. Learning the forms of a place isn't giving up who you are. It's the simplest, cheapest, and most elegant way of saying, I respect your home. And there isn't a country on earth that doesn't return that. In Thailand, you'll feel it returned on your first day, in a smile that wasn't there before. That's why we look at the world's destinations in detail.
Now tell me in the comments, which custom from another country surprised you most when you learned about it? And if you've been to Thailand, tell me what stayed with you. Write it below. I read them all. If this prepared you better, leave a like, subscribe, and save it to rewatch before you fly. And don't miss the next episode of the series about Thailand's most famous beach, the one the country had to close for almost 4 years, and what that teaches you about choosing your island. See you there, here on Destinations in Detail.